Hey, David here. In this video, I'm going to discuss the benefits of shooting in 4K and why you should be doing that if you can, even if you still export in 1080p like me. This video is in 4K though, so just hit that button on the side there to see it in its full glory. I'll also include a bit of the downsides of shooting in 4K somewhere at the end, if you're interested in that. Okay, let's get started. Of course, the main benefit of shooting in 4K is you have a 4K video now, and that means you can fit a lot more pixels into that, and if you're watching on a 4K TV, you're going to have a lot more detail. Another benefit would be that it's future-proof. A lot of people already have 4K TVs as they're dropping their prices down. Computers are coming out with 4K more and more, and we're even seeing smartphones moving into a 4K range, although let's not get me started on my opinion on those. Another benefit that you don't really hear about too much is that if you scale your videos from 4K down to 1080p, those 1080p videos seem to have a lot more detail in them and have just a little bit more sharpness in their picture. As you can see from Full HD David, 2.7K David and 2K David. Now, I'm going to give it to Full HD David to continue. So I'm shooting now in 1080p, so Full HD. And as this video has been processed in 4K and I'm taking up a quarter of the screen, I am in my full resolution. So this is basically the quality you would see on a regular 1080p compared to if you scale down the 4K video to 1080p, you can see a bit more crispiness in that footage. Back to you, 4K David. There you go. So you have a lot more options if you are filming in 4K and you're going to export in 1080p or Full HD. You can crop into the picture, you can rescale it, you can pan around, you can move up and down, you can change different, you can all sorts of cool little camera movements in your videos post-production without actually having to have, well, you can simulate having a bit more expensive equipment than you actually do have. If you're exporting into 1080p, you have those options. And you're not going to actually lose any image quality as you're shooting in 1080p. The big benefit for YouTube videos is that you can take screenshots directly out of your videos and use them as your thumbnails with a high amount of detail, as the pictures that you take out of a 4K video are at 8 megapixels. Back to that, exporting at 1080p, you can also reframe your shots quite well. So if I'm standing over here and I'm standing over here, I need to go a bit further back. So now that I've moved the camera, we can get into this reframing a little bit better. So as we're shooting in 4K, we can crop the picture, we can pan it a bit more. So with these added features, we can include some jump cuts, and then it'll seem like we're using two different cameras when in fact we're actually just using one camera with a high resolution, and we're then editing in post. So that brings me back to that. It can seem like it's a much higher value production than you actually are using. Like, currently, this 4K is being shot on a Panasonic G7, available on Amazon for something like $400, which is, for 4K video, that's quite insane. Oh, before I forget, if you're filming wildlife or something like that and you need a bit of extra zoom, that extra crop, if you're exporting in 1080p and shooting in 4K, you can zoom in a bit further into the picture and then you'll have a bit better... Wait, hold on. There we see the native husky in its almighty glory in my yard. As you can see, the sand has formed around it as it likes to run around in that specific area. So as you can see, you can get a bit of extra zoom into your shots if you're using 4K without actually having to have an extra zoom lens or having a very long focal length. Which brings me to probably my last benefit, image stabilization. If you're shooting in 4K and you're exporting in 1080p or 2.7K, while I'm here, all of these benefits really of exporting into 1080p, you can also use the same for if you're exporting into 2.7K or 2K or any other smaller format, and the same would be said if you're filming in 8K and you're exporting in 4K. But 8K cameras are a bit pricey nowadays. Anyway, back to stabilization. If you have shaky footage and you shot in 4K, in post you can stabilize it with image stabilizing software like Premiere Pro has Warp Stabilizer. To stabilize the footage, the software will have to move your video's frames around a bit which could cause dark space around the edges, and then you'll have to cut into your video and you could lose details in the video. If you're shooting 4K and export in a resolution lower than that, you're not going to have any detail loss. Do I really have to tell you the cons of shooting in 4K? Yeah, what are they? You have large files, so you're going to need a larger hard drive or external storage, bigger SD cards. That stuff costs a lot of money to have larger ones, and usually you'd have to have a faster write speed on your SD cards and on your hard drive. On your hard drive it doesn't really matter if you have patience, if you can leave it, you can let it run overnight. But the video footage, your footage is going to be larger, so you're going to need to think about that. That could be costly. It's a lot slower to work with because the files are larger and you need a very strong PC to be able to process with it. You need to have a faster, you need to have... Mish! Okay, let's do it like this. So, some of the cons. Misha, tell them about the cons. Tell them about the cons of having 4K, of shooting in 4K. Come on, Misha, you want to be a know-it-all. What's the cons of shooting in 4K? Mish, what are the cons of shooting in 4K? Yeah, come, tell them. They want to know. Zuri, do you know what the cons are of shooting in 4K? No? Okay. So can I tell them then? Yeah? Is that alright with you two? Is that alright? Slower. You need a faster PC, stronger PC, more specs, that type of stuff. Generally, if you're filming in 1080p or a lower resolution, you can get a bit more frame rates in your videos, and in 4K it's normally around the lower sides. For instance, some very good cameras, mirrorless Sonys, etc. can shoot at 60 frames per second in 4K, and yeah, that's not really going to slow your footage down that much. Whereas if you are using an iPhone, you can slow your footage down to I think 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second at 720p, so regular HD, which is a proper slow motion. And with the new Sony Xperia XZ Premium, whatever the heck it's called, you can shoot at 960 frames per second, which is insane. But back to the boring things, the cons. 4K cameras are expensive. Yes, they are, unless you have mine, the Panasonic G7. And probably the biggest argument that you'll probably hear about why you should shoot in full HD and not in 4K is that full HD video is still quite good quality, which is, yeah, let me just go back to that future-proofing point. Everything's moving towards 4K, so that's really a rubbish argument. But if you don't have the money right now for a 4K camera, 1080p will actually do quite well for a couple of years. Anyway, I hope this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tech-related / how-to-related videos like this one. I'm David, and I am going to see you in the next one. Ciao.